Hey friends, this is Joseph Maynor. So what I want to do in this video is I want to talk about some of my recent insights over the last couple of weeks. So some of you may already know that, I've been working on spiritual enlightenment pretty heavily, especially this week. Studying Neo-Advaita, trying to understand Neo-Advaita, trying to get it, right? Because they would say there's nothing to understand, right? So trying to get Neo-Advaita, which I think I do have like a pretty solid quote unquote grasp on now. Now I'm all paranoid about using language, right? No, but that's a good thing too, right? We do want to be somewhat paranoid about using language and words. But I've also come up with a few insights this week and last week too that are different from anything I've ever thought before. So this has actually been a pretty productive couple of weeks for me spiritually, because now I'm obviously offering life coaching services for people, and part of that also includes conversations about spiritual enlightenment. Right, if you want to talk to me about spiritual enlightenment. But I'm going to warn you, right? I don't fit into any particular ism regarding spiritual enlightenment. My path is, I've always thought of spiritual enlightenment as just something that, nobody can ever, you can't learn spiritual enlightenment from a book, right? It's the best that could happen is a guru points you, right? And I'm not saying I'm the best guru for anybody, right? But for me, I'm the best guru, right? From myself. And spiritual enlightenment does have a meaning, right? I mean, obviously it does. So to me, it's obvious that it does. So one of the first insights that I developed, especially this week, I've had a real profound insight of this, is now this is just a model, right? Don't think of this as something that's like true. Everything is paradoxical, right? There's a little bit of truth in this. There's a little bit of falsity in this too, but it's a pointer. The pointer I want to give you guys is that truth is a middleman block. To what exactly? Well, to love and beauty. So we tend to think that truth is the most important thing, right? And it is for communities. It's the glue that holds communities together. This is why you'll often hear people talk about truth who are running communities, because it's social glue. Truth is the social glue that holds the community together. Doesn't have to be. I mean, can you imagine having a community where it's just like, I can't tell you what to do, I can't tell you what to think, you're on your own? Nobody would be a part of that community. So people like to have truth as a kind of pretext or social glue that holds a community together. So that's what truth actually kind of is. Because when you're just living your life, right, or you're meditating or you're doing your thing, how often are you concerned about truth? Or you're doing your spirituality, right? How often are you really concerned with truth? Almost never, right? You're not concerned with truth. I would argue that what you're concerned with, and it's not about the words here, I would argue that what you're concerned with is love and beauty. And so, and actually truth is a block to love and beauty too. This is something I think a lot of certain people online, or just in general tend to get wrong, is that they're linking love with truth. Now, I know this is controversial. People are going to say, well, yeah, of course, truth is love. Love is truth, right? Um, that's exactly what I'm asking you to question in this video. I don't think love is actually chained to truth. And what's even weirder is that you are love. You are love. You just don't realize it because you're clinging to truth. So, and truth is a block to love. And it's a block to ethics too. This is why you see people doing really nasty things thinking that they're being loving. And they may even use the words like, well, no self, blah, blah, blah. But then they're not really loving, right? Why is that? What I would argue the reason is because they're clinging to truth. See, when you're clinging to truth, that is exactly why you're not expressing yourself as love. That is exactly the block from expressing yourself as love. Or actually, you can think of it as just like you're just not open. You're closed off. You're walled off. You're walling yourself off with truth. As weird as that sounds. And you'll find that when you start dropping truth, you stop judging other people so much, and you're able to express love, which is the relational. So I feel like Neo-Advaita tries to do this. It tries to do this. The problem with Neo-Advaita is even though it values love, which is correct, it realizes that there's some issues with semantics. We need to get beyond language, which is correct, but it's still clinging to truth. These people are still clinging to truth. And this is so ingrained in spiritual enlightenment. Well, it's truth. Yeah, it kind of is like when you're early on the path, right? Truth is a useful concept. And truth is useful for community glue, right? Like we're all Neo-Advaita people. We all do the Neo-Advaita no self handshake. We all speak the Neo-Advaita language. It's a way for people to feel like they belong to a particular community. But the problem is, what happens when somebody joins that community who goes against the Neo-Advaita truth? That person is not treated with love, right? Now, you might argue, well, it's all love. And I would say that's true. It's very true. Love from the relative perspective is not all rainbows and butterflies, right? Actually, love from the relative perspective or the human perspective, it contains hate too. It's actually a shift back and forth between love and hate. But from an absolute perspective, it's all love. So what you want to do, I would argue, if you want to connect with yourself as love more, right? I've been talking about love now for a while, not because I need a girlfriend or, anything weird like that. This is all spiritual enlightenment work. This is all a realization. It's the realization fundamentally that I am love. And I've actually learned how to dissolve truth. And actually, I have a lot more friends now, male and female, of every kind of person almost. College age people to elderly people, you know what I mean? And just everybody who I interact with now in real life, not online, but in real life. I've developed a rapport with. And the way that I've done that, even homeless people, right? Like the homeless Bob, right? The guy down the street. He's not a friend, but I'm just saying, he's an acquaintance. And we've had long philosophical, I'm just saying that like, when you get beyond truth and you just open yourself up to being love, that's authenticity, and that's magnetic too. That's totally magnetic. It's energetic. It's not something that I come off well online because you're not interacting with me. But I think this video is kind of, you know what I mean? It's like being loving doesn't mean being nice either, right? You are love. Like even when you're fighting with somebody, you're love, right? So because, and this is something again that I don't think a lot of people understand. Some do, but then they reduce the relative to the absolute somehow. Like there are people who talk about, well, there's two sides to things. There's the human and there's the divine, but then they want to reduce the human to the divine, which is actually a mistake that I think comes from truth. I see people, Neo-Advaita people, doing this all the time. Well, only the absolute exists. And they get real stuck on like semantics. Why are they doing that? Because they've memorized a script. See? They've memorized a script and they're looping on that script. That's what truth is. And the weird thing about Neo-Advaita, just to circle back to Neo-Advaita as a good example of this, it's almost right. That's what's so frustrating about Neo-Advaita. It's almost correct. It's at its best. What Neo-Advaita is teaching you is love. The problem is it gets hung up on truth, gets hung up on semantics. So instead of opening itself up to the relational and accepting the existential, it jumps into the semantic in a real defensive way, right? When its precepts are not agreed with. So truth, when you're attached to truth, the reason why you're not loving is because you're insisting that everybody agree with you. How can you be loving if you're insisting that everybody agree with you, right? That's not love. That's not authenticity either. But I think what Neo-Advaita is trying to do, it takes a half measure on something that's almost there, and I'll explain how it can be corrected. So what Neo-Advaita is doing is it's saying, it's having it both ways. It's saying that semantics is a problem for love. All there is thatness. It's like, don't think, dance. Don't think, dance, right? Well, that's a good pointer. And I think we can kind of agree with that too, right? I mean, those of you guys who are artists, like, people who I interact with are mostly musicians and other artists, creators. Creators aren't hung up on truth, right? They're channeling. They're performing even. Performing can be used as a negative connotation and it can be used in a positive connotation. We'll talk about beauty, which is, I think, comes after love, right? It's higher than love. Now, when I say it's truth, love, beauty in a hierarchy, take that with a grain of salt, right? Because that's a thought, but it's a pointer. And I'm going to explain why it's useful to think of love being different than truth, which I think I've already done. I'm going to give more reason for that. And then I'll talk about why beauty is different than love and truth. So when you're fixated on truth, you want everybody to agree with you. You set up a community where everybody has the same ideas. And you're insisting on that, right? That's what gives the power for your community to exist, is that we're all Neo-Advaita people here. But then it sets up an exclusion too, because anybody who doesn't buy into that lingo or that social glue, you're going to see as in need of something. You're going to judge them. And then you're going to say there's no self, and you are going to judge them, and you're going to act a certain kind of way toward that person. like they're wrong or something. Well, that's a block to love right there. I mean, I get it. Like every community needs to have a power to exist. And truth just creates that power. And then there's usually like one person on the top at the top who's promulgating the truth. And then everybody in the community is kind of repeating that jargon. And it's kind of like the secret handshake among everybody in that community. This isn't just about Neo-Advaita. This is like a family works this way too. Right? My family believes this or that, you know. A business, a company, you might have a job. The culture in your job, it's like that too. This is the way we do things around here. So if you don't conform to those rules, to that truth, then you're seen as having something wrong with you. Instead of actually realizing, no, there's actually really nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly fine. You're just in a system where love is being blocked by truth. To create that system. I mean, if you're jumping into, you know, a lake of hot lava, don't complain about getting burned, right? I mean, it is what it is. It's not personal. And actually, that's love, too. It's a little bit paradoxical. But when you release truth and you allow yourself to just be that, which is what Neo-Advaita is trying to do. But the problem is they get hamstrung with the semantics. They start looping on the semantics when they get defensive. Instead of throwing that away. See, I think this is where, you know, this is why Neo-Advaita is not really the highest form of spiritual enlightenment. It's really not. I mean, it's a good starting point for some people. But actually what you'll find when you really start to internalize love is you accept people for who they are, right? Like you talk to them with empathy, like, and you're agreeable without trying to be agreeable too. And you're not whining or complaining about really anything, right? You're just flowing with connecting energy almost. And you avoid divisive language, actually. Because the goal is relation. The goal is relation, see? It's not about being liked necessarily. You don't want to be inauthentic. You don't want to be fake. You don't want to be selling anything to anybody, right? It's about inclusion. And you can't be inclusive if you're clinging to truth too tightly. Now, obviously, you know, everybody has a sense of truth. But what I find is that people that are really tapped into love, they're not concerned with truth. They're not concerned with exposing people for being corrupt, or that's all negative shit, man. See, it's law of attraction. If you start talking about negative shit all the time, you're creating that. You're creating a life of a living hell. See, people who are tapped into love, they bring the best out of people that they relate with. Now, if somebody's hostile towards you, obviously you're not going to be able to do this. But I'm just saying, like, in general, and people have to agree with this, right? Like, if you join a system where people aren't doing this, then you're a fish out of water, right? You're going to get, you know, you're not going to be able to do this. But I'm just saying, like, as an individual, you definitely can do this. Or as a business owner, you definitely can do this. And I think actually great managers could are if they're tapped into this, this is leadership, basically the essence of leadership. And it's not about being fake at all. Don't fake anything. See, if you're interested in spirit, somebody laughed at me for saying this, but spiritual enlightenment is about authenticity. So don't try to be Jesus, right? Be you, right? I mean, but there is something true to that, to the whole Jesus thing. What it is that how you treat people matters. Like inclusiveness, forgiveness, being positive, being supportive, being inspiring. These things are important to spiritual enlightenment. See, I think what some of these Neo-Advaita folk tend to do, is they tend to poo-poo morality. You know, like good and bad don't exist. They're just words. Blah blah blah. Just like, dude, you know what? That's total BS. And actually, that's one of the actually insights that I have is that love includes morality, but you also got to understand too that morality is going to be biased. But the two sides of you, right? There's a relative side of you and there's an absolute side of you. The relative side of you is a human. Okay, is and isn't, but it's just a pointer. You are showing up in the world as much as you are consciousness, right? You might call this, two sides of the self, if you want to. And actually, you don't even need to cling to that, right? You can throw that out and you're perfectly fine too. That's just a story, a thought story. But now, obviously, if somebody's hurting you, you're perfectly justified to strike back, right? But let's just say that you're on your own, right? You're just living your life and you're just trying to, do spirituality the way that you want to do it. You do want to be a good person. And I'll tell you why. Okay. This is so funny. People kind of laugh at me about this, but I'm actually a big fan of law of attraction. Not Abraham Hicks, but just the principle of law of attraction in general. So it's energy. So when you're wholesome and good and light and funny, this is what Neo-Advaita, I think, tries to teach too, but it does it in a kind of ham-handed way. Doesn't quite get there. Okay, but that's what conscious creation is. Conscious creation is play. And it's relation. It's conversation. There's an art to conversation. When you have conversations with people and you're kind of being funny or, whatever. Even like serious conversations, there's energy being exchanged there. Actually, it's love. But you can't really do this if you're trying to control people, though, because you're trying to maintain a community. So you're attached to truth. So that's what's blocking you actually from opening up as a conscious creator, is your attachment to truth. You can't do that because then you would have to say, this truth is just a game that I'm playing over here, which is ironically true. But you can't do that, right? But then that blocks you from being a conscious creator, blocks you from love, and it also blocks you from beauty. So what I'm going to do, friends, I'm going to take a break. We'll spend the last 5 minutes explaining why I think beauty surpasses love. just as a pointer, right? Don't take this as truth, but it's just it's an insight actually. So just give me 1 second. I'll be right back. All right, friends, welcome back. So if you guys remember in my first video on spiritual enlightenment, I was skeptical of the thesis that you are the creator, right? Or that God is the creator. I'd be careful about the word God too. God is like truth. You got to be real careful with these words. God and truth, put those in brackets. At some point on the path, yes, when you're integrating Vedanta and something like that, of course, God and truth are going to be relevant, or even Neo-Advaita. But I'm talking about spiritual enlightenment. I'm not talking about Neo-Advaita, right? But I was skeptical of the insight that you are the creator, not just a creator, but the creator. And I said in that video, that just seemed like a thought to me. Well, I realize now that ain't a thought. I wouldn't even call it truth. It's just, you don't need to know the concept of creation to see creation. As weird as that is. We tend to think, oh, well, no, every seeing is a thought. Well, that's not true. So, for example, if you're tasting a soup, you stick a spoon in the soup and you taste it, the thoughts come after the taste. But actually the judgment about what it's missing, that's a thought. But that comes from the taste. The taste itself is not a thought. It's a perception. You can argue with me about maybe perceptions, all perceptions are thoughts, blah, blah, blah. But what I'm saying is that you can see creation and you can see beauty. You are creation. You are beauty. Both as a finite perspective and as the whole, and not even. And this opens you up as an artist. See, love is relational. It has to do with how you interact with people. Beauty is more fundamental than love. Because regardless of the relational, creation is always creation. Beauty is always relevant. And when you can tap into this as a conscious creator, the world opens up to you. Now, you're fully accepting your ego, everything that's happening, all of it. And you're seeing how it's all being created. And you stop judging it. You still judge it a little bit. Like, you might, for example, I'll give you a good example. I was playing a gig last weekend, and there's it was a jam session actually, at the International Cafe on Haight Street. And this young kid comes in, right? We're all pretty seasoned jazz musicians. So this one kid comes in and he's playing a trumpet. I play trumpet too. And this kid just was awful. Like, he was just playing every wrong note, right? Some of the musicians on the bandstand were like cringing, right? But I just looked at it like I was that guy too when I first started out, right? And you almost want to give him like a kudo. You almost want to say you almost want to lie to him a little bit and say that he sounds good, right? Just to inspire him, right? These other guys, man, they wanted to kick him out. They were like, get this guy out of here. I was kind of supporting him. I was just like, nah, man. And then I told him, don't just take one chorus. Like, if you're going to take a solo, you got to play at least 3 choruses. So we're all sitting back. he tries to play 3 choruses. I think he gets through like 2.5 choruses, and he lost the form, and so we kind of picked it up for him. So that was kind of cool, but he was pushing himself, and I just thought to myself, this is creation right here. This whole process is creation. Even the judging is creation. So beauty is a touch higher than love. Love is a touch higher than truth. That's basically the pointer in this video. Okay, friends, hopefully this is a good video. Just an insight. Take it for what it is or leave it. Just, it's part of the work that I've been doing the last couple of weeks. Take care.